Hi everyone, my name is Zahra and I'm here with the Essex Art Center to bring you guys a 4-week course on watercolor basics. Every week we're going to be learning a new watercolor technique and we're going to be doing a small project associated with it. This week we're going to be learning about graded washes and I'll show you in a second what your final product might look like. This is a preview of what we're going to be making today. We're going to be outlining different sections on our watercolor paper and doing a wash in each section. And later on with a pen, we're going to be creating some designs within each section. So before we begin, we'll need to make sure we have a few things. Firstly, you'll need some sort of watercolor. I have palette paint-based watercolors in blue, red, and yellow. You can use any type of watercolor you have on hand. That's perfectly fine. You'll also need a cup of water for cleaning off your brushes in between color changes. And you'll need a paintbrush, of course. You'll also need watercolor paper and masking tape to define your borders. You'll also need a pen for drawing in after you create your washes. What I've done here is I've taped down the watercolor paper to my working surface so that A, it doesn't go anywhere, and B, I'll have clean borders when it comes time that the paint is dry and I can take the tape off. So let's get started. Firstly, what we're going to do is we're going to take our masking tape. If you don't have masking tape, you can use any other tape that's easily removable, like washi tape. And what we're going to do is we're going to create triangles using the masking tape. And what you can put these lines wherever you wish, whatever you think is a fun pattern. I'm just kind of improving this bit, and you can too. They also don't have to be triangles. They can be any sort of trapezoid or any other shape you like. That one piece of tape is a little bit irregularly placed, so I'm just going to put another piece of tape on top of it because you really want a nice border to it. You can create any type of abstract pattern you wish. Make sure you make the spaces big enough for you to draw in once we're complete. And make sure the tape is well in place. So there we go. Next, what we'll do is we'll create the graded wash. So for this, we're going to use a wet on wet technique, which means that we're going to wet the area that we're working on at any one time. before we apply color. So take your brush, dip it in your clean water, and carefully wet your paper in the section you're working at the moment. Once you've wet the section, take the color of your choosing. I'm going to start with a red. You can mix it in an empty spot of your palette or whatever you're working on. Make sure you add enough water to the pigment that it's easy to move around. You can dip it in the water if you need to, and then apply to your paper like so. Add more water as you go along to lighten the color, just like this. You might need to take more pigment and put it in at the beginning, at the start of your triangle or whatever section you're working on. Dry your brush off a little bit and use the water to lighten the pigment as you go along. You can see we have a nice even border here, and if you have napkins nearby, you can take them and use them to clean up your edges a little bit. And you see this nice even gradient. Now what we're going to do is we're going to let that dry and we're going to move on to our next section. So do the same thing. Take some water, clean water on your paintbrush after making sure all of your color is off of it, and apply some water to your next section. So once you make sure your next section is wet, you can go in with your next color. For this, I'm actually going to mix a purple. So I'm going to go ahead and add some blue to the center of my palette. And I'm going to add some red to that until I get a really nice purple color. Once I have the color I want, and again, you can use any color you want, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to add the paint into the corner of your section and slowly move it down till the color dissipates. Sorry, you should be moving in one direction like so. And you can use some more water to help you out. And if you want the color to be more saturated, you can go in and change that. You can add another layer once the paint is dry. But for now, I'm going to let that be, and I'm going to move on to my next color. So I'm going to do a blue here. And again, I'm going to apply water to the section I'm working on. Make sure the area you're working on really has a nice amount of water on it. The paper is really moist. And again, if you don't want your paint to run, take a little bit of the napkin and clean up your edges. Make sure not to disturb the paint in the actual section that you've worked on. Right, so I'm going to take a little bit of blue. And I'm going to start from this side this time. And the color really wants to pull out, so let it do that. And let it become lighter as you go on. Sorry. You shouldn't go over the section that you just worked on like I did. But just make sure, let it pull out like that until you have a nice even gradient. Okay. So keep on filling in your sections like this. Next, I'm going to do a green by mixing some of my yellow and blue. And make sure when you're mixing colors to use a different spot on the palette, because you don't want to muddy your other colors. So now I have a lovely blue. Green. Which I'm going to apply down here. Next, I'm going to create an orange color. I'm going to do this by mixing some yellow and some red together. And then I'm gonna move to the next section. So here we're going to go in with our orange. Again, you don't have to do exactly what I'm doing. There we go. Just go in and clean up our edges a little bit. And you can make any number of colors that you like. So you can take some more yellow, mix it in with our orange. You can take a little bit of blue, create a darker green. Apply some water on our next section. Take that darker green and start to put that down. I'm going to have to create a little bit more because I didn't make enough. And it's okay if it's slightly different from the first version of the color you created because everything is still fluid and you can work with it. It's easier to make sure the section is really wet so that the color moves around really easily. Okay. Keep going like this. You can use this time to really come up with all sorts of crazy colors that you like using color theory and color mixing. I'm going to use this brown purple that I created by mixing purple with yellow. And put it down here. Let's see. And we have 2 more sections to complete, so I'm going to make another variant of orange. A more yellow-orange this time. If at any point you need to change out your water because it's getting too dirty, definitely do so. And for our last section here, we can do some form of red again. Maybe tone this red down with a tiny bit of blue. Okay. So what you can do now is you can go back to your first square and you can see here that it's dried. So if you want to make the colors more vibrant, you can go in and do that now. Make sure you have a wet brush. You can just layer on top like this. Same for the purple. And it doesn't matter if you have to make a new purple, that's completely fine too. Just make sure you're checking to see if the area you're working on is dry. Make sure you're not using too much water so you don't get these blooms here. And now we're just going to wait for this to dry. So finally what I did is I went ahead with my pen and I created small flower patterns in the gradient sections. You can put whatever you like, draw whatever you like in here. I just chose to draw in some blooms and some flowers to make it look pretty. And as you can see, I've removed the tape from the borders inside the watercolor sheet. And now I'm going to remove the very outside borders of the piece of work, like so. And you have your completed piece.